Welcome everybody. Welcome to session BIZ109, SaaS application innovation using AI to improve employee productivity. We're so glad that you're here, and we really do hope that you've had a great week at re:Invent. I represent AWS App Fabric, and App Fabric has had a large, full week this week at re:Invent, and we're excited to dive deeper on the topic of what App Fabric is doing at AWS and how we're solving some really great, interesting problems. This session specifically is for SaaS application builders who are interested in developing new experiences within your application, within your end user's UI. We're specifically going to be talking about how App Fabric helps you use generative AI in your application. Let's begin. My name is Holly Watson. I'm a Senior Product Marketing Manager on the AWS App Fabric team, and I'm joined today by my friend and my colleague, Anant Patel.
Hey guys, excited to be here. Thanks for coming.
Today we're going to be discussing how the rise in the adoption of SaaS applications has created a handful of different challenges. Challenges that AWS App Fabric is taking head on and solving both from a security perspective as well as from an employee productivity perspective. We'll dive into what that means for SaaS application builders and developers interested in using and adopting AWS App Fabric, and of course we'll explain the details on how to get started. Let's begin with the challenge. The number of SaaS applications used by customers around the world has grown significantly over the last decade. In our discussions with customers and our interviews with end users, what we repeatedly hear is their preference is to use best-of-breed, purpose-built SaaS applications. They want to use these functionality or these particular apps because they're feature-rich. Their capabilities are really full, and they dive deep into the functionality they need to perform their jobs best. In fact, what we see is that users prefer them over monolithic platform suites. And these patterns have accelerated the adoption of SaaS applications, the average number of SaaS apps used at an organization. Even among some of these end users, these customers of yours in the audience, who are using these platforms or these suites, they're still supplementing those suites with 4 or more additional applications to perform their job. And as I've mentioned, the vendors of the applications, they're being loved and preferred over suites because they're so feature-rich. Their capabilities are deep and integral to performing end users' jobs. But the challenge presents itself that these applications they don't always work well together. They don't always speak well together. They're not always integrated. And that creates security challenges when managing the corporate data. What ends up happening is security and IT teams charged with keeping corporate data secure have to begin building point-to-point integrations across the set of applications used at an organization. That's challenging work. That takes time, and it's costly to manage and maintain over time. Additionally, employees across the organization feel this tug and pull. They're having to jump between applications up to an hour every day as they try to complete their tasks. And think about it. If you think about your computer that you might have open, you might have a few handful of tabs, your messaging app, your email, your calendar, right? Just to complete a task. And so that type of swivel chair, jump between apps is really draining on your productivity. These are some of the things that AWS App Fabric wants to take head on. And in June of this year, we introduced AWS App Fabric, which connects multiple SaaS applications together for better security observability and end-user productivity. IT and security teams can use AWS App Fabric to abstract away the need to manage point-to-point integrations across their SaaS applications. App Fabric automatically normalizes the disparate data coming from each of these SaaS applications. We use a couple of different formats to do so, the Open Cybersecurity Framework, or OCSF. We also offer the normalization in Parquet and Apache. Again, this is done through App Fabric, so all of that data can be fed into App Fabric and then sent to your security tool of choice. And we work with some pretty amazing brands. Really excited to show over 14 different productivity applications that we're already integrated with, and we're compatible with 5 different security tools, with more coming every day. Brands like Asana, Zoom, Miro, Atlassian Jira, security tools like NetSuite, Splunk, the vendors that we've again seen a large adoption of from our customers even. And so understanding that App Fabric works in the background to connect these applications, again, for better security, helping IT teams normalize the disparate data coming from these applications, we knew we could do more. We knew we could use that premise to actually push the bounds and solve those challenges for end users using these applications. And so again, as I mentioned, many of the SaaS productivity applications we use are intended to make us more productive. But when they're not speaking to each other, when they're not integrated, data silos form. And work today, to be very honest, it doesn't happen in a singular team. You're oftentimes working across your organization, collaborating on projects. Some of those tools are preferred by a marketer, some of those tools are preferred by an engineer, and some of those are preferred by your product team, maybe finance. Data becomes siloed in their tools of choice, and it breaks down your productivity, it breaks down your collaboration, ultimately creating that swivel chair and leading to what we're calling technology overload. And I personally can admit, leading launches, working with a ton of different teams, I find myself often questioning, is that document in my message? Did I log it in my storage repository? Right? What is my leadership preference? Do they prefer a Slack message or an email? Oh, it's cognitive drain, it's tough. We want to do better. We feel like there's a way that we could collaborate more productively, really. And the challenge of technology overload, as I mentioned, you have these disconnected applications, it creates data silos. The context switching results in this cognitive burden, going back and forth. Where did I leave my document? How can I better collaborate with my product team, my finance manager, legal? And ultimately, it's this cognitive burden that just drains productivity. It's a drag on productivity. So again, we saw an opportunity to do more and enhance employee productivity using AWS App Fabric.
Awesome. So when we think about this technology overload that Holly was mentioning, we think about the applications that we all like to use today. We're as AWS is super fortunate that they're choosing AWS to build these applications. They come to us for our reliability, our operational excellence, our security, our global footprint to bring their services to their users, and a whole host of other services that help them run their applications. But when we talk to these app developers and we ask them, what are the problems they're trying to solve for? What are they trying to do going forward? The most common thing we are hearing now is around generative AI, which is the latest buzz. When they talk about generative AI, they see many different ways that they can apply this technology inside their applications to help their users get things done faster. The first one is around collaboration. How do I take this synthesis of all this data that's happening in my application and make it really simple to understand, extract out intent, summarize information in a matter of seconds? It helps your users use that app much more efficiently. The second one is around content collaboration, or generation, excuse me. How do I create emails, presentations, other artifacts that can be built on top of my data that can now extend my data in new ways? They're also thinking about automation. How do I take this chatbot experiences that's become very popular now and make it self-served for customer service and troubleshooting? And last, they're also talking about security. SaaS security is still a high priority for a lot of organizations when it comes to adopting SaaS. So how do you think about using generative AI to help investigate security issues, to create rules and alerts to help prevent that going forward? But as we start to think about these problems, and specifically around generative AI, we can start to think about how are apps starting to build generative AI experiences. Many of the apps that we showed on the previous screen have already released generative AI capabilities. And what the foundation of all of those capabilities is really around their data. And we heard in the keynotes earlier this week, the data that an application has ultimately is their differentiator. There's a lot of rich context in there that's super useful. But for humans and us as users of these SaaS applications, all of our information is not scattered. It's scattered across multiple applications, not just one application. So really, we have to start thinking about how do we bring these applications better together and in a more meaningful way. Because right now, what we start to see is every application has their own generative AI capabilities, but it doesn't really change the core behavior of app switching and context switching that Holly was talking about. We still have to go to each individual application to extract out the insights. And yes, the time to do that is now much faster with generative AI, but the challenge is we're still doing the same behaviors as before. And without this missing context and missing data, it ultimately leads to these data silos will continue to form. And the generative AI responses are going to be missing a lot of critical information that actually help us make better decisions. So the second piece is around, if I decide as an app developer to actually build integrations, what do I have to do now to actually get this data into my application? Well, first you have to build the integrations across each individual application. But the key challenge with that is every app has their own data models, their own APIs, their own schemas. So it requires a lot of tedious manual data transformations and data normalization in order to make that data super useful for me. Now, on top of just building the integration is also managing it. APIs change, new features are released, and so it becomes this really tough decision with a finite amount of resources. Do I invest in innovation, or do I invest in trying to build more integrations that my end users want? And the last piece is around just trust with generative AI. As we know, this is a very new thing that's kind of came on the scene pretty recently. But there's things that we're still working on. There's hallucinations, there's security, there's responsible AI. All of these components are things that we still need to solve for in order to make generative AI useful and make end users actually adopt this technology. So based on some of these problem statements, we're super excited to introduce to you guys App Fabric for Productivity, which launched as a preview on Monday of this week. App Fabric for Productivity is focused on helping app developers build more personalized app experiences or enriching existing AI capabilities with the context from multiple applications. This feature combines the goodness of generative AI as well as all of the user data to really focus on how do we make that user much more productive in the applications that they prefer. So let's dive into a few of the details of what this feature offers. The first is we offer generative AI-powered APIs to application developers to generate insights and actions from multiple applications. Insights is a very vague term, but think about it. How do I help prioritize my focus? How do I optimize my workday? Those are the types of insights that we're starting with these APIs. But the insights are just part of the problem. What do I do about these insights? So we actually also enable cross-app actions. For my preferred application, I can actually complete actions across multiple different applications. So it allows me to stay within my workflows, allows me to execute workflows much more simpler now than having to navigate from application to application. The second part is around how do we actually find the right data to generate these insights? So because App Fabric is now going to build and manage all these integrations across all the different data sources that are used to provide these insights, you don't have to do that anymore yourself. And as far as building the integrations, we also go as far as normalizing the data so that if I need to send an email, it doesn't matter if the email is in Outlook or Gmail. We're taking care of all that normalization complexity behind the scenes so that the objects that are common across multiple applications can be easily tracked and identified.
And that's right. Another core tenet of AWS App Fabric for Productivity is that we are not introducing a new UI. Let that sink in. We are not introducing a new UI. You, as the SaaS application developer, choose how App Fabric manifests in your existing UI. That means your end users are not having to pull away from your homepage, your dashboard, where you want them to be. Your end users stay in your application to complete their tasks. App Fabric works behind the scenes, supporting your goals with generative AI in your application so that those end users stay in your app. They are surfaced recommendations, as Anant's mentioned. They're recommended actions so that they all can perform their day of tasks. They can stay in their flow of work in their application of choice. Additionally, we are very keen on making sure that we are developing trust, not only with our application developers, but also with those end users all the way through. And so a key component of App Fabric for productivity is making sure that we are showing our work. We're showing the sources, the files, the information that's coming from the recommended actions and the insights that we're driving, so your end users can quickly click into the material that's being surfaced and verify, this makes sense. This is a good recommendation. This does help me draw some more insights to make a better decision. End users control what apps they want to enable or disable at any time. We've centralized that in the quick onboarding process that we'll show in a moment. So again, your end users have control of the applications they want App Fabric to be able to access and use to generate those personalized user insights for them. And the best part is that we are already working with a handful of different brands as sources. These brands include Asana, Atlassian Jira, Miro, Slack, Smartsheet, Google, and Microsoft 365. Sources that are really used by many of us to complete everyday tasks. So we're reimagining productivity with App Fabric for productivity. We're wanting to leverage all the goodness that can come from the large language models and surface them in your app of choice. So again, we're empowering your end users not only to choose where their center of gravity is, but also how you as a SaaS application developer want to actually surface those experiences.
All right, so we're gonna do just a quick snapshot of the end-to-end service, what's happening here, and then I'll do a bit of a deep dive on how this whole thing works behind the scenes. So on the left-hand side, you do see some of the data sources that Holly just mentioned. Because we're building integrations with these applications, this is now how we're bringing in and aggregating user content. We're doing the normalization and bringing it into the middle here where App Fabric is helping combine that data and using generative AI to essentially bring out cross-app insights and actions and surfacing it inside these applications that you love to use. So how does this actually benefit the app developers? So now as an app developer on the right-hand side, what's happening now is you have a single source of cross-app user data across all these different applications that you can now use to build and enrich new experiences in your application. If you're an application on the left-hand side and you're more of a data source, well, now your data is actually being surfaced inside other applications, and these other applications are thinking about, how do I take that data and build net new experiences? So the combined effect of this is now you're building net new experiences and people are building net new experiences on your data. And there's a lot of power that comes there from an end user perspective when all of these applications are truly connected together. Now, when we think about the generative AI component of this, at AWS, we're really focused on democratizing AI, and we're taking the exact same approach with generative AI. There's so many different large language models out there, each with their own characteristics, strengths around performance, cost, quality, et cetera. But really, our goal is to focus on how do we bring the right insights to end users in a safe and secure manner. So we're really excited to, as our starting point, to use Anthropic's Claude models to really generate insights for our features. And we've been partnering closely with them to really understand how can we be responsible, how can we build that trust with users. They're founded on AI safety, and that really resonates with us as an organization, as well as us as a service team as well. So we're really proud to continue to work with them and want to continue to work with them to expand these features in the future. But yes, we have Bedrock available in case we want to have the option for choice and adaptability as this thing evolves. But this is a great starting point for us, and we're super excited about it.
Today, employees typically switch between 6 to 8 SaaS applications from different vendors to complete tasks, switching context constantly. Application developers see an opportunity to use generative AI to reduce this context switching and provide a richer end-user experience, but are often limited to data within their own software. Without including cross-app data, data silos form, and generative AI results miss important context from other applications that help end users make better decisions. AWS App Fabric for Productivity reimagines productivity in SaaS applications by generating insights and actions with context from multiple applications. App Fabric fully manages the integrations with multiple SaaS applications and automatically normalizes data for use across apps. This means developers can enable App Fabric productivity features directly into their application's user interface to maintain a consistent app experience for their users, whilst surfacing relevant context from other applications. With cross-application context, developers provide a more personalized user experience that increases adoption and loyalty. End users benefit from accessing insights they need without interrupting their workflow. Embed AWS App Fabric in your application's new or existing generative AI assistant to enable your user to be more productive and more connected across their preferred apps.
Awesome. So that video gives you a quick recap of what we've talked about today, but now we want to go a little bit deeper inside the specific APIs that are available in preview today that app developers can use to build new experiences. The first one is around actionable insights. It's this idea of all this content and information that's happening across your applications that you may not be aware of. How can we proactively surface that information in the flow of work so that you can now act and optimize your day better? Let's take a very simple example. Sometimes we're stuck in a meeting. There might be a customer escalation email that comes in. Your team is already working on messages on what to do to solve this problem, and you've already created tasks to actually build the next steps to mitigate this problem. You come back from a meeting, and now you have a swirl of information. What do I have to do today to actually get this information? I got to go to each individual application. I have to figure out what the right information is, what happened, why did it happen, and how are we going to best proceed with it. With App Fabric Actionable Insights, we can do all of this work for you. We can look at all the context across the different applications, and we can summarize it into a very succinct insight that allows you to act faster. So let's break down the left-hand side, what you guys see there, the important updates side of the screen. At the top, you see an insight title, which tells you very, very quickly what is this insight about. The second part below that is a few sentences that says, give me more details about this insight. What's really cool about this, though, is that generative AI is not only providing a summary of what's happening across all your different applications, but we're actually surfacing the hyperlinks. So as Holly mentioned, these reference or sources, show me your work. Now we can tell you which specific applications, what specific artifacts were used to help generate that insight. It allows the user now to click into those individual applications if they want to, but now they don't have to if they don't want to. The second half of that is, like I mentioned, actions. So I had this customer issue. What do I want to do? I probably want to schedule a meeting with the customer or reply in an email. As a starting point, we're actually also enabling cross-app actions that can be used and executed directly from those applications. So if I have to send an email, if I want to schedule a meeting, if I want to create a task, these are starting actions that we support today. But what's really neat is the LLMs are also building on top of the insights and thinking about what should these responses be. So they're going to pre-populate information around the different fields and say, what is this email body? What is the email subject? Who should this be sent to? All of that information now can be done for you. Now, the users always have control, though. We never want to actually execute an action without user input or validation. That's super important to us. So the user still has the option to edit this content and then execute the information as they see fit. Now, when it comes to actions, as a starting point, we're actually providing a App Fabric UI that allows you as a small pop-up to actually execute the action. Now, as a starting point, I meant that intentionally because we do see a world where we can actually provide this natively so you can embed this capability directly into your applications, and we'll work to build that in the future. We're really excited. That last screenshot I showed you was actually Asana, who has built and embedded this capability into their application today. We're really proud to continue to work with them and collaborate with them and think about how can we build net new experiences into their application. That homepage that you saw there is where their users go to ultimately start their day. What tasks, what action items do I have to do to actually get work done? Well, now with App Fabric, now you have a new source of cross-app data that also extends and provides even more context on what I should be focused on and why. We'll continue to work with them on this going forward, and we're excited for them to continue to roll this out to their employees and customers. The second use case that we have is around meeting preparation. And the scenario here is we all get added to meetings that we probably don't know what's going on or we're not on point to present, but family emergencies happen, conflicts happen. How do you best prepare for that meeting in a matter of minutes now? The meeting preparation API essentially focuses on what are your upcoming meetings on your calendar and what are relevant sources and artifacts across your application that can be used to help prepare for that meeting. So let's take this example here with Miro. So Miro is this visual workspace, this collaborative whiteboarding application. Their users today use this application to dump in a lot of information, help organize their thoughts, and then use it to organize and come up with their presentation or meeting content. What's cool about App Fabric and some of the ideas that we're talking about here is now they can use the meeting preparation API to actually help bring in that content in a matter of seconds. What's also cool about Miro is that they have their AI capabilities, Miro Assist, and they're thinking about ways to extend this even further. How do I take the cross-app data that's now on my visual whiteboard and actually use it to build a presentation for my meeting or an agenda for my meeting? So now it really is this end-to-end flow of you have data coming in, all the data that you use as a user, but you're also able to extend your specific app's capabilities and build on top of that data. So it's really powerful stuff when we think about that. So a little bit more information now about what's happening behind the scenes with these features and how this all works. As Holly mentioned earlier, this all starts with the end users themselves providing their consent, their authorization for App Fabric to actually generate insights and actions on their data. So what we've done actually to start now is we have this user portal. We want to centralize all of this authorization flow in a simple, easy to use manner. So we have this end user portal which individuals can go to and connect whichever applications that they see fit. Whatever apps they want, they go through a very simple authorization flow that we're all super familiar with at this point in time, where you kind of click allow or accept and allow App Fabric to generate those insights. What's important now about this process is we're only going to start bringing in data based on what that individual has access to. We don't want to bring in all of the potential data. We're only focused, again, on user-level insights and what that user has access to. So as we bring in this information after we got the authorization, what we're doing is normalizing it, and we start generating embeddings. Embeddings are essentially numerical representations of this data, and allows us to essentially do semantic searches to find similarities across all of these different artifacts. After we generate embeddings, we create a user-level index. And I'll say that again, it's a user-specific index, not a team-specific, not an organization-specific, but a user level. We can do that intentionally because we want to keep securely the types of data and artifacts from each individual user and what they have access to separate. So even if someone has access, 10 people have access to the same document, we'll create 10 different versions of that in order to keep that segregation of data strong. So what's next? What's the actual step in generating insights? Well, the first step is to find relevant information. App Fabric uses a common process known as retrieval augmented generation. Our goal is to help augment the LLM's response and drive more personalized app experiences by providing relevant context that's specific to that user. So when it comes to the actionable insights API or the meeting preparation API, let's take the meeting preparation API for example. Based on my upcoming meeting on my calendar, I now do a search, a semantic search around similarity of content to say what is relevant for that particular meeting. And I extract that out from the user level index that we created previously. What I'm doing after that is actually bringing then all of that relevant content and context and feeding that into the LLM. And the great thing about this step right here is we're bringing in the right context to make it more personalized. But in terms of the prompt itself, we're also actually abstracting away that complexity. We're providing this all-encompassing use case API that gives you both the data as well as the prompt and the insights, so that when the response of that is ultimately just a JSON response, it allows you to render and update that however you see fit inside your application. It's a really succinct way to just bring in the very key details that your end users want. It's going to be the insight title. It's going to be the insight summary, those embedded links and the references to the right artifacts that were used to generate that insight, as well as all the relevant actions that were there. So this is super powerful now because when we think about that single API call does authorization, it does data management, it does insights generation, it does actions. All these things are now highly abstracted away, and you can now build those generative AI experiences in your applications that much faster. When we think about where we're going to go with this capability, it's great as a starting point to be able to provide all this abstracted complexity away from you, but in the interest of time, we'll continue to think about ways to build more flexibility, more customization in this. But right now, when we talk to customers, this is the easiest way for them to start building net new experiences inside their applications.
That's right, and a key aspect of what we are trying to build here is, of course, first working with our customers, getting feedback from them, hearing understandings of what's going to work with the ideas that we have with App Fabric for productivity. We work very closely with some of those key brands you saw, and these are just a few quotes of what those SaaS applications are saying. Zoom, for example, is really focused in on sticking true to Zoom and still enabling that close collaboration that they offer through their platform. Miro, just the same. Collaboration is key for them. They want to drive that through their entire UI and with their end users, expanding from enterprise organizations all the way through to brand new startups. Collaboration is key for Miro, and they see App Fabric for productivity as a way to enhance their existing UI. Smartsheet, for example, another really prominent application that's used for project management. They're actually looking to use App Fabric for productivity to enhance their existing AI experiences, their Smartsheet AI platform, as they call it. The biggest takeaway for this is not only are we trying to work with some of the brands that we recognize as end users prefer, but we also want to make it adaptable. If your SaaS application does not yet have a generative AI assistant, App Fabric for productivity could be your starting ground for that. If you already do have a generative AI assistant, you're wanting to enhance it, you're wanting to expand it beyond what it's currently doing, App Fabric can also help you. As Anant mentioned, these are API calls that you have choice on how it actually manifests in your UI, how it ultimately is surfaced for your end users, and it really gives you the control on what that means. End users, again, have full authorization. They control what apps they're connecting through those steps that Anant mentioned. But those are the key aspects that we are really trying to drive, and as I mentioned earlier, to a core tenet for App Fabric is we're not wanting to introduce a new UI.
All right, so just to kind of slowly wrap this up here, some of the key takeaways from our discussion today. We've talked a lot about how do we bring data from other applications into your app. What does that actually mean for app developers? Well, now you have a much more stickier app experience. End users are going to want to engage with that app a lot more if all of the data that they actually care about is at their fingertips. That engagement leads to better satisfaction. That leads to better retention. That leads to ultimately impacting your top line. The second core piece of this is that we don't require the end users or end customers to actually have an AWS account. So after you build this capability into your application, you can sell it to 100% of your customer base. This allows you, again, to really think about impacting your top line while leveraging generative AI in a more meaningful way for your users. The second thing around bringing a more richer app experience, as we've mentioned today, you have full control of your application and how you want to embed this capability. It could be Asana's widget, it could be inside an existing chatbot, it could be part of a dashboarding virtual workspace. There's a ton of different ways that this can be embedded. And really the goal of that is you know your users the best. You know your app, you know how they want to use your app, so we want to empower app developers to be able to build and integrate this in a way that they see fit. Third, because App Fabric takes care of the integration workloads, because we do the building and managing of integrations, we do the normalization work on your behalf, it really does allow you to focus your resources now on the right types of work. Focus on the innovations that are going to drive net new opportunities for your business. And lastly, when we think about just the quality of AI more broadly, I'll say it again, your data is your own differentiator. But end users have their data across all these different applications. Bringing in their data into a single spot now allows you to have higher quality, more relevant results for your end users that are going to drive better trust. It's going to have a more transparency on what type of information is used to generate that response. And that ultimately is going to allow them to start having more confidence in using these types of features.
So let's talk about how you as an app developer can get started. There's a few handful of steps, and that only includes you first reaching out and registering your application with App Fabric. We'll go through a little bit of a verification process. Then you ultimately get access to the APIs, as Anant mentioned. Those APIs would allow you, again, to call them, put them in your app, and design the UI experiences for your end users. That, of course, is then on your launch schedule and your launch timeframe, right? You would be able to choose how you want to deploy this in your application and ensure that App Fabric is surfacing the right insights and the right actions for your end users. If you're wanting to learn more about App Fabric for productivity, please do scan this QR code. It will take you to our website. You'll learn more not only about the applications we're already integrated with and supporting from our security aspect, but you will be able to click in and dive deeper into our productivity functionality. There is some getting started pages there where, again, registering your app, gaining access to these APIs is all available on this site. We do really appreciate the time today and your guys' attention. And we look forward to taking a handful of questions during the peer talk that immediately follows our discussion. Anant and I will be around to answer a few questions if you are wanting to stay in the room. But please, we encourage you, try out App Fabric for Productivity. It is in preview today, starting on Monday.